Imagine losing the one person who held your family together, your father, and then finding out years later that someone close had been secretly exploiting his legacy. That's what happened to me. Not because he was some larger-than-life superhero, but because of how quietly and consistently he showed up for all of us. But it didn't stop there. He was also grinding his way through law school, turning pages at midnight while the rest of the house slept. I still remember hearing him softly recite legal definitions in the living room, pen scratching against paper, the dim light barely lighting his notes. He was exhausted. I could see it in his eyes, but he never once let that stop him from being present. My mum, who was a stay-at-home parent at the time, always said he had this way of treating every moment with the family like it was sacred. He was showing us how to build something meaningful, not just through words but through relentless action. He believed that no matter how hard things got, family was worth every sleepless night, every broken back, every hard-earned dollar. He'd dance with her in the kitchen while the rice cooker hissed in the background. He'd cradle my baby sister like she was made of glass. And with me, he was more than a father. We'd sit and talk for hours about everything and nothing. He taught me how to tie a tie, how to ride a bike, and most importantly, how to be a man worth something. To the outside world, he might have just been another guy in a suit juggling too many responsibilities. But to me, he was everything. My grandfather, the man who promised to support us, was actually draining the very businesses my dad built with his own hands and money meant to help us survive. But he underestimated one thing: how far I'd go to protect my father's legacy and take back everything he stole. When I think of what a real man looks like, I think of my dad. He worked himself to the bone, holding down multiple jobs just to keep food on the table. And when I say present, I don't mean just physically being there, I mean really being there. He'd wake up early to make us breakfast, walk us to school when he could. He and a couple of his buddies started to small businesses from scratch. I'd sit in the back office sometimes while he held meetings or drafted plans, hearing words I didn't understand, but knowing that whatever he was doing, it was for us. He wanted more than survival. He wanted stability, growth, and a legacy. One that he could eventually hand down to us, brick by brick, and spend whatever free time he had playing silly games with me and my younger siblings. Somehow, amid the chaos of building a better life, he made time to be the best dad you could imagine. Not out of obligation, but out of love. He was the kind of man who'd remember your favorite snack after a long day, who'd kneel down and look you in the eyes when you were upset, who made you feel like nothing else in the world mattered more than that moment. And let's talk about hustle. My dad didn't just dream, he built. But even with all the work he was doing, law school jobs, businesses, he never acted like we were a burden. Not once. Looking back, I realized he was laying a foundation, one of grit, love, and sacrifice. And for a while I believed that nothing could shake what he built. It came out of nowhere, like a slap in the face you never saw coming. One day he was fine laughing at the dinner table, making plans for a family weekend trip, and the next, we were in a hospital room being told he had stage 4 stomach cancer. The kind that doesn't ask permission, doesn't offer second chances, doesn't care about how much you've already survived. At first, we didn't believe it. It didn't make sense. He was too strong, too full of life. But the tests didn't lie. And neither did the look on the doctor's face when he told us the prognosis. But I'd see her in the kitchen late at night, gripping the sink, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. She never thought this would happen. She was there when he opened his eyes for the last time, just long enough to say goodbye, and then he was gone. Mom was a full-time housewife with no income and 3 kids to raise. The businesses he built were out of reach. We didn't even know how to begin managing them. And just like that, the future he worked so hard to secure crumbled into uncertainty. He wanted to play the role of the generous patriarch while hiding the fact that the money he held over our heads was never his to begin with. Months, maybe less. There was no surgery that could fix it, no magic treatment to buy us time. A woman in medicine, he scoffed, she'll just get pregnant and quit. Waste of time. And my grandmother, just a quieter version of him, repeating the same toxic logic like it was gospel. They looked at us not as family, but as disappointments who dared to want more. Sharp suits, a booming voice, always ready with a loud opinion and an exaggerated story about how he built the family from nothing. The businesses weren't doing okay, they were supposedly tanking. We never saw any real financial reports, just his word that there wasn't much money coming in. He kept us on a leash, making us feel like we owed him for every dollar. If it weren't for me, he'd say, "You kids wouldn't even be in school." I remember the way he read the obituary at the funeral, not with grief, but with a smug satisfaction, as if he were bragging. And he kept feeding us this story that things are tight right now, that we should be grateful for every little bit he sent our way, and we were. My mom took on part-time jobs, and we stretched every cent he gave us. We thought he was going out of his way to help us survive. Just pain management and the slow, cruel countdown. Mom tried to stay strong for us. She did that thing mothers do, putting on a brave face while dying inside. The hospital became our second home. Tubes, monitors, beeping machines, those became the soundtrack to our days. My dad, once this mountain of energy, was now bedridden, barely able to speak. The nurses told us he might not remember us anymore. The cancer had spread so far. It was affecting everything. But I leaned in, whispered, "It's me, Dad." And even though he couldn't say a word, he smiled, just enough to let me know he still recognized me. That one smile wrecked me and saved me at the same time. The hardest part wasn't the machines or the medicine, it was watching him try to smile through the pain just so we wouldn't tea break. That smile was the only thing holding us together. There's one moment I'll never forget. I was sitting next to him, holding his hand. He could barely move, barely breathe. A few days later, he slipped into a coma. Mom never left his side. After that, everything felt like it was falling apart. We were grieving, we were broke, and worst of all, we had no idea what was coming next. If my dad was the kind of man who built things with love, my grandfather was the kind who tore them down with pride. From the outside, he looked like the kind of guy who had it all figured out. After my dad passed, he showed up with a cane in one hand and fake sympathy in the other. And then came the offer. "Let me handle the businesses," he told my mom. At first it looked like he was helping. The companies stayed open. The employees got paid. But as the years passed, the cracks began to show. What we didn't see was how he twisted my dad's legacy into his own personal piggy bank. Even worse, we started noticing the way he talked about my sister like her dreams didn't matter. We didn't know it yet, but everything he was giving us came from the very businesses my father built, and he was skimming the lion's share. We thought we had a guardian. What we really had was a parasite. Life after Dad felt like living on the edge of a cliff. One wrong step and everything could come crashing down. With Grandpa holding the purse strings and Mom trying to pick up the pieces, we were just surviving, never really living. Mom, who had never worked a formal job before, took whatever she could find. I managed to land a few scholarships and part-time teaching gigs, which helped with my tuition and kept me from being another mouth to feed. My sister, though she was brilliant, top of her class in pre-med, always buried in books and labs. And my younger brother, he made sure we never forgot who held us together. He'd call just to remind us. Meanwhile, he was barely giving us crumbs off a loaf that belonged to us to begin with. And we, tired, grieving, and unsure, believed him. We thought we had to be thankful. We thought he was saving us. It was just us. We shared meals when we had too little, shared laughs when we had nothing else, and kept each other grounded through every wave of uncertainty. Every lie he told, every time he held our survival over our heads, it just brought us closer. We learned to trust each other, not him. We built our own support system in the ashes of his deception. "I paid your tuition this semester," he'd say with that smug tone. A little gratitude wouldn't hurt. To the rest of the extended family, he spun it like he was a saint. "I'm doing everything I can for those poor kids. Their mother couldn't handle anything on her own." He was the quiet one, always watching, always studying, determined to make something of himself. All I wanted was clarity, just a bit of truth in a sea of half-lies and silence. I had spent so many years just trying to keep our heads above water. I didn't have time to think about what was really going on behind the curtain. He literally evicted his own son's company and gave the space to the competition, just so he could pocket the rent money. All those years we were scraping by, skipping meals, selling furniture, thinking we were lucky Grandpa was even giving us anything, and the whole time, he was swimming in our inheritance. My dad didn't just build those businesses to make a living. He built them to leave something behind for us, to make sure his kids wouldn't have to suffer the way he did. Every late night, every missed holiday, every dollar, and he did that for us. And this man, his own father, turned it into his personal ATM. But one conversation changed everything. She cleaned houses, worked part-time in retail, even did admin gigs for offices that paid her next to nothing. My grandfather wasn't just stealing money, he was rewriting the narrative, claiming my father's hard-earned legacy as his own, while painting us as ungrateful. He had been involved with one of Dad's companies before stepping away due to differences with the new management, a phrase I would soon come to understand fully. I took copies home and showed them to my mom and siblings. The looks on their faces said it all. Years of fear, of stress, of feeling like we weren't enough. A deep, collective sorrow that the man we thought had saved us was actually the one chaining us down. After the usual condolences and catching up, he leaned in and said, "You ever wonder what really happened to your dad's company after he passed?" I told him we'd been told it wasn't making money anymore, that things just didn't work out. His response was a bitter laugh. We met up at a small cafe, the kind with terrible coffee but quiet corners where real talk could happen. Every night she came home exhausted, her hands raw and her feet aching, but she never complained. He'd used my father's passing as an opportunity to quietly transfer control of my dad's shares to himself, under the guise of representing the estate. But in reality, with zero accountability, once he was in charge, he started draining the company. Salary hikes for himself, personal expenses disguised as business rights, and most shockingly, he leased the company's original office space, one that my dad had worked so hard to secure, to a direct competitor, under his own name. She'd still cook dinner, still ask us how our day was. The strength she showed in those years is something I'll never forget. Meanwhile, my siblings and I did our best to stay afloat. She didn't want to be a burden. I told her hell no. She was born to be a doctor, and if anyone deserved to make it, it was her. We all pitched in. Mom picked up more shifts. I started tutoring students on weekends, and my brother sold some of his belongings to help cover fees. But behind all that determination was fear. Every semester brought another round of stress. How would we pay for this? Would Grandpa cut us off? Would we have to drop out? And Grandpa, he painted himself as a hero, making everyone believe we were living off his goodwill. My sister once came to me in tears, saying maybe she should quit school and find a job. We got by because we leaned on each other. We knew no one else would carry us, not Grandpa, not our distant relatives, not society. The irony is, Grandpa never saw that part. He thought his manipulation had made us dependent, but what it really did was make us stronger. He thought he had us trapped. He thought we'd never see through the facade, but he was wrong. I wasn't looking for revenge, not at first. It started with a message from one of my father's old business partners. He didn't waste time. "I figured that's what your grandfather told you," he said. "But that's not what happened. Not even close." Then came the truth. My grandfather had never stepped away from the business to support us. Let that sink in. I sat there in stunned silence, trying to process it all. And it wasn't just about the money, it was what it meant. I felt sick, angry, betrayed in a way I didn't think was possible. It wasn't just theft, it was erasure. The business partner showed me documents, bank records, property leases, email correspondences, things he had kept just in case he ever needed to clear his own name. That night, my sister said, "He didn't just take money, he took years from us." And she was right. Every sacrifice we'd made, every hard decision, it had all been based on a lie. But that was the moment something shifted. We stopped surviving. We started planning. The betrayal lit a fire in me. Not the kind that burns out quick, but the kind that smolders, calculated and slow. The kind that waits. If Grandpa thought we were still the same scared, broken family, he was about to find out just how wrong he was. The first step was legal. My siblings, my mother and I were the rightful heirs to my father's shares in the company. Grandpa was only ever meant to be a temporary representative, not a king. We gathered documents, signed affidavits, and hired a legal team that actually did more than collect a check and nod. For the first time, we had professionals fighting for us instead of feeding us excuses. But that role was symbolic, a title he only held because he was representing my dad's shares. The board never questioned it because they assumed he was acting in the family's interest. When they learned he had rented the company's old office space to a competitor for personal profit, some of the more vocal family members turned on him completely. I had to be calm, composed, strategic. This wasn't about yelling. This was about reclaiming power. Every step we took, every email we sent, was another brick in the trap we were building around him. One of my cousins even confronted him publicly, demanding he evict the competitor. Under pressure and without support, he had no choice but to comply. For the first time in years, he tasted real consequences. That the throne he'd built on lies, manipulation, and stolen credit had crumbled beneath him. The agenda was simple: reassess the representation of my father's estate and elect new leadership. The room was sleek, modern, ironic, considering how old the poison we were about to purge was. Every seat around the table was filled when he finally walked in. I knew Grandpa cared about two things: money and reputation. So I started talking quietly, carefully to the rest of the extended family. I told them what he'd done. I showed them the paper trail. Suddenly, the man who used to boast about saving us found himself facing awkward questions and silent dinners. So I did what he never thought I'd do. I reached out to every board member, one by one, and told them the truth. "I'm the one who put you and your siblings through school," he said, voice rising. "I carried this family." The lawyers confirmed what we suspected. Everything he was doing was legally shaky at best, criminal at worst. I turned the chair around slowly, deliberately, like something out of a movie. "The board," I said calmly, "and the law." They were people who had seen the documents, heard the truth, and knew the damage he'd done. His mouth opened like he had something else to say, but the weight of the truth hit him before any words could come out. The board members looked away. A few nodded in quiet agreement. The estate had never formally appointed him. He had no authority to represent our father's interests anymore. The shares, the income, the voting rights, they all belonged to us. And took a seat again, not as chairman, but as a representative of the family. I looked around and said, "Effective immediately, I'll be overseeing the transition. We won't be needing further input from him." I didn't want power, I wanted restoration. From now on, every dollar earned, every decision made, would reflect what my father intended. Something that honored the years she gave up to hold us together. His legacy was safe. The pride he once weaponized now served as a prison. No more boardroom, no more illusion. Just a bitter old man sitting in silence, haunted by the weight of everything he'd lost and everything he could never take back. And with the proper signatures from my mother and siblings, I became the official representative of my dad's estate. Then came the board. Grandpa, in his arrogance, had made himself chairman of the board. It wasn't easy. Some were loyal to him, others just didn't want to get involved. But slowly, the tide turned. I shared documents, proof of the financial mismanagement, the leasing scam, the embezzlement. I didn't ask for revenge. I asked for restoration. This company was built on my father's sweat, I told him. I just want to make sure it serves the people he intended it for. The final piece of the puzzle: family pressure. Then came the office scandal. I was nervous the whole time, not because I doubted the plan, but because facing him, really confronting him, meant facing years of hurt. He had no idea what was coming, and that made it perfect. It was the day I had been waiting for, the day I had to show my grandfather that the control he clung to wasn't his anymore. We scheduled the board meeting early in the morning, quietly notifying every member except him. And there I was, sitting at the head of the table in the chairman's chair, his chair. His face was priceless, confused at first, then annoyed, then something deeper, a crack in his armor. "Who told you to sit there?" he barked, his voice just a little too shaky. I didn't flinch. The room was silent. He looked at the others, waiting for anyone to back him up, but no one moved. These weren't his cronies anymore. "You don't have the authority to do this," he snapped. "I'm the chairman. Where I corrected you were the chairman, but only because you claim to represent Dad's shares. That representation has been transferred." He stared at me, eyes narrowing. And that's when I said it. No. Dad did. Silence. The kind that echoed. His face went pale. For the first time in my life, I saw him speechless. You could see it hit him. Everything he'd built, not through effort but manipulation, was gone. The throne was gone. The illusion shattered. I didn't scream. I didn't gloat. I just stood up, handed him a printed letter from our lawyers officially revoking his role. He stood there for a second longer, then turned and walked out without another word. That was the last board meeting he ever attended. I stepped down from the chairman role soon after, taking a quiet, modest job in the company's treasury department. But more than that, I got to make one final motion before stepping down. I gave my mom a full-time job in the company, something stable. Grandpa, he went back to his house, alone. Stepping down as chairman wasn't a loss, it was liberation. I never wanted power for its own sake. I only wanted justice. And now that it had been served, I was ready to build something new, not from the top down, but from the ground up, just like Dad did. Just a quiet space where I could keep an eye on the numbers, make sure the money went where it was supposed to, and ensure no one could ever again steal from my father's legacy. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt right. Honest, grounded, real. I took a modest role in the company's treasury department. Nothing flashy, no corner office. The company itself, once shadowed by secrecy and mismanagement, started to breathe again. After years of being treated like she was helpless, like she was just a grieving widow clinging to survival, she finally got the respect she deserved. She belonged there. Every peaceful night, in every ledger I reviewed, he just failed. No one came rushing to his defense. No one tried to save him. He went from being the self-proclaimed and honoring those who can no longer fight for themselves. My grandfather tried to rewrite my father's legacy, but I made sure the world remembered who the real hero was. If you've ever felt powerless, know this. The truth always finds a way, and sometimes it comes with a twist of karma. Patriarch of the family to just another bitter old man in a big, empty house in every moment of progress. I felt him, my dad. Not gone, not forgotten, but present in every step forward. Every smile on my mom's face, it reminded me why we fought so hard. This wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about restoration. My sister is thriving in med school, and my brother's confidence is blooming. We have dinner together every week, real dinners. With stories, something honest, laughter, warmth. We talk about Dad sometimes. We honor him in the way we live, the way we grow. We created a role just for her, something that tapped into her natural skills for organization, coordination, and people management. She became the company's new family relations liaison, helping employees deal with work-life balance and benefits. It wasn't just a job, it was healing. It turns out, has a very long memory. With no visitors, our family has never been stronger. No purpose, which is him, his regrets, and the echo of a power he no longer holds. The man who once towered over us with control now sits slouched in a recliner, resented even by his own wife, an extended cousin. Grandpa had siphoned off what little remained of his personal savings to support a sugar baby. Yep, a much younger woman who fed his ego while draining his wallet. She left him the moment the cash dried up, and now he's stuck with nothing. No legacy. Was finally back in the hands of the people it was meant to support. The board meetings stopped. The passive income vanished. The family dinners he used to dominate with his long-winded bragging turned cold and quiet. Even my grandmother, who had always stood by him, even in his worst moments, started sleeping in a different room. Turns out even she had her limits. Employees who had been demoralized under Grandpa's silent greed began to speak up. Ideas flowed again. Productivity rose. People were excited to be part of something that felt alive and principled. For the first time in years, it felt like the company had a soul again. My sister returned to medical school with new energy, and my brother began interning at the company, finally part of the business Dad wanted to pass down. One of my proudest moments was bringing my mom into the fold. Seeing her walk into that office, head held high, was like watching a flower bloom after a brutal winter. My siblings, now free from the financial shackles Grandpa placed on them, started to rebuild their paths too. We weren't rich, not yet, but we had something better. Control, clarity, dignity, and the company. Every small success, and in every hallway, Grandpa didn't go out with a bang. His influence dried up almost overnight. Then the final embarrassment came to light. My sister stumbled across some gossip online, then confirmed karma. He spends most of his days alone now. And while he withers in isolation, my mom laughs more these days. We've built something real again. And Grandpa, he's finally learning that fear-based loyalty isn't the same as love, and that legacies, once broken, don't come back. Revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes, it's about restoration, reclaiming what was stolen, protecting what was sacred. Like, subscribe, and share this story if you believe in poetic justice.